this is Anita Wood. I'm happy to join you and let you know about some of the legislation that was passed at this recent General Conference. First of all, I'd like to remind you that all legislation will take effect the 1st of January of next year. That is, unless it had something in it that indicated it was to take place immediately following General Conference. But nothing that we found on the Board of Ordained Ministry matters has that legislation in it. Now, there's some legislation that has been called into question, and we'll deal with that in a little while to tell you what's happening there. But if you go to the General Board of Higher Education Ministry website, we do have a draft on there that has been checked against the red line draft from the publishing house. That's the first draft of the new Book of Discipline that we were able to receive and look through. And so we do believe the numbers that we have for paragraphs will match up with the new Book of Discipline when you get them. If they don't, then Correlation Review Committee made some additional changes after we saw it. So look for them by the new disciplinary numbers. Now there's one big question remaining from the last General Conference, and that's around the issue of security of appointment. As you know, there was a move by a delegate to have it challenged for its constitutionality. And so this legislation will go before the Judicial Council when they meet in October. And they will decide, first of all, whether eliminating security of appointment is constitutional. Now, in addition to that question, what's being discovered is that there are two paragraphs that may be contradictory, as some would say, others that give different information. Whatever they are, how they will come into being and play out against each other is something that the Council of Bishops will be looking at in their fall meeting, and that is just after the Judicial Council meeting. What they need to look at is paragraph 337.3, which is where the new language from the ministry study was placed regarding those who do not receive an appointment. It does include the possibility of a part-time appointment or the possibility of being placed on transitional leave. But what was not dealt with was paragraph 334.1. This is still retained in the Book of Discipline and does have the language in it that every effective elder in full connection who is in good standing shall be continued under appointment by the bishop. So how those two will be able to exist side by side is the question the bishops will be discussing. We will certainly give you updates as we receive them on this legislation. So let's look at some of the other changes, and you have received many of these in e-newsletters that have come out of the Office of Candidacy, and we do thank Meg for doing that. First of all, group mentoring is to be arranged wherever possible, and this is in order to encourage those entering ministry to ask questions together, to meet with each other, to form collegiality as a group as they look at and discern their vocational call into ministry. There's a new position on the board, the Vocational Discernment Coordinator, and I imagine that in most instances that person will be very involved with that first meeting that's called Orientation to Ministry Event that we are asking for in paragraph 311. This, once again, is an opportunity for candidates to meet each other, to raise questions, and to get an understanding of the various forms of ministry, so that those who may not, at this point in their discernment, made a decision about whether they are seeking elders' orders or deacons' orders, or whether, in fact, they are looking to become a local pastor, can hear the various forms of ministry and meet one another as they talk about those together. Paragraphs 310 through 312 have been reordered in order to make them, as one would say, user-friendly They have the requirements for candidacy in sequential order, and we hope that you will benefit from the changes that are in there. One education change I'd like to make you aware of is that when you are considering an exception to an undergraduate degree, that is a process that you have in consultation with your Board of Ordained Ministry and with GBHEM as we look at whatever the needs are for that individual and discuss that together. There's some legislation around local pastors. First of all, student local pastors is a term that was reinstituted at this General Conference. As you can see, the definition there is that in a conference other than the conference in which they are certified candidates, a student can be a student local pastor. This is for those in seminary beyond the bounds of their own conference and serving somewhere else. We wanted to make it clear about what their responsibilities were to the conference in which they are being given a license as a local pastor, and then their home conference where their responsibility for candidacy is, so that they are clear that they are two distinct conferences to which they relate and what their responsibilities are to each of those. Then in 318.5 and those others, you can see that part-time and full-time local pastors who completed the course of study may serve on the district committee, and 2 associate members or full-time local pastors who completed course of study may serve on the Board of Ordained Ministry, and both of those will serve with voice and vote. And then local pastors who are part-time, as well as those who are full-time, may now serve as candidacy mentors. There are a few changes that affect those in provisional membership. First of all, there are some changes in the questions being asked as they come for ordination. And so I would advise you to take a good look at these as you come up to the interview season. They are questions that are asking them to focus more on their practice of ministry as they were in the provisional process, and to look at a way that they can be able to state clearly what they have done for a project that demonstrates fruitfulness in carrying out the Church's mission of making disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. There are also questions related to vocation and to the practice of ministry. So please, as a group, look at those and develop some questions that will help you get at the kind of things that are being asked in those new requirements. Just a reminder then that it was brought into being that provisional members cannot be retired as provisional members. If they reach the mandatory retirement age, they discontinue as a provisional member and may become a retired local pastor if they're serving, but they cannot continue as a provisional member. And any leave of absence during the provisional membership time will be counted as part of the 8-year limit. There were some substantial changes to wordings around deacons at this General Conference. We brought into the ordination service the words that deacons will now be ordained to word service, compassion, and justice. Compassion and justice was added. These were not invented. They're not new words. They're already in the description of who deacons are. But it brings a new focus to what their ministry is about. And we hope that it will help in the interpretation of what is the work of a deacon and the focus of their ministry. So look for that as you plan next year's ordination service, and be sure that those words are indeed included in that ordination. Paragraph 331 is a rewrite and needs careful examination. It brings some clarity to all the possibilities of appointments for both provisional deacons and deacons in full connection. And it gives, in addition to the listing of the types of appointments that might be appropriate for deacons, It gives some of the responsibilities of deacons to provide the board with their understanding of how they live out their call within that appointment setting, and then to how they are accountable to the board and to the bishop in that appointment. So 331 is an important change. I would ask you to look at that carefully. I would also say that I know there was quite a lot of publicity around the termination of secondary appointments at one point that was being proposed, and that was retained. So secondary appointments are still required, and that's still in paragraph 331. And then termination procedures for deacons, consultations and appointments continue for 90 days after that conversation. So look at that and the changes that are in that, and be sure that those are carried out within your conference. There was a great deal of work done on the revision of the complaint process. It has eliminated the Committee on Investigation. Investigations have now been shifted to what is being called a Council for the Church, and that council will look at any evidence for a chargeable offense with the conference chancellor, and if there is evidence, the bishop will then appoint the presiding officer for a trial court. So if it's not found that there is sufficient evidence, they will bring a recommendation to the bishop to dismiss the matter. There is a lot of change included in the discipline around complaint process. It is detailed and it demands a great deal of attention. Whoever in your conference deals with that, I would recommend they look at that carefully, and we will certainly be dealing with it in more detail in other settings. Some of the other changes in regards to leave. Many conferences have had a conference relations committee, and we are asking that every conference now be sure that they have such a committee from their board that can hear the request for changes in leave and in their status of persons in ministry. You will notice that in 354, the transitional leave paragraph has been totally rewritten. This gives the procedures for persons who might be put on such a leave if there is no longer a security of appointment. And it's also applying to deacons who might be between appointments and to persons who've been in extension ministries who are seeking an appointment within the local congregation. So that once again is another important paragraph to look at. And then 358, you may remember this is incapacity leave. The title has been changed. It's now medical leave due to medical and disabling conditions which prevent performance of ministerial duties. There are a few changes in that, and once again it's something that needs to be looked at by those who meet with persons who seek to go on such a leave. Paragraph 361, named Administrative Location, is a paragraph written for those who might be placed on such a leave because their effectiveness has been called into question. It sets the procedures for the bishop to carry out in such an instance. So, again, an important paragraph. Please take a look at these as you look at those persons who might be changing their status. Well, General Conference, many said, didn't do very much, but as you can see, there certainly were a lot of changes that affect our work and your work as you seek to lead your Board of Ordained ministry. We're here to serve you in any way we can and to help you get your work done. We have many training events planned and webinars, and we know that there's a lot of information there that we hope that we can impart to you and help you in your work. So please think about being a part of all the activities that we have planned. We seek to be here to respond to you as you call or email, but do give us a little time to do that. We have experienced budget cuts and staff cuts, and We're doing our best, but we do like to hear from you, and we hope that we can help you as you seek to serve those entering ministry. May God be with you in the work that you do, and thank you for all that you do for those who seek to be faithful to a call.